Hello, thank you for tuning in to the Source Cannabinoids inspired by the condition tuberous sclerosis complex. My name's Jill Woodworth and I am your host. Today on the podcast, I have the pleasure and honor of interviewing Sherri Tutkus, founder and CEO of the GreenNurse Group and medical director of Irie Bliss Wellness. She also started the podcast GreenNurse on the Go. She is active all the time in the cannabinoid cannabis community, a wealth of information. She came from a traditional background in nursing, and in this podcast, she's talking about how she ended up in the cannabis industry. She also was involved in alternative medicine in her career before she got into cannabis, along with the nursing, working in major hospitals in Boston, but really not crossing into cannabis, thinking of it more as a joke until something happened in her life that really brought her to a point where she was ready to try anything. And a friend of hers from the nursing community came in while she was bedridden with a incredibly awful experience with C-Diff, among other autoimmune issues that kind of just happened when she has the C-Diff from her job in a hospital in Boston, landed her flat on her back. Her health deteriorated to the point where she couldn't get out of bed, put on multiple pharmaceuticals. And this was this vital woman with 3 children, a single mom, basically unable to work, unable to do anything. And this is the story of her journey back off the pharmaceuticals, tried cannabis, light bulb moment. And if you've been there before, like I have, you know how that works. So she also talks about the potential for cannabis right now kind of coming into the forefront more. People are getting more familiar with it, including doctors, how it's going to continue to be the community that pushes the agenda forward. So this is an awesome podcast. I don't want to keep talking about it. I really appreciate Sherri coming on. She's been on before and we cross promote on our pages. So you can find her at greennursegroup.com. She's on our TSC Talk Facebook page quite a bit, puts on a lot of online support, positively processing or perception. I think that's it. It's a webinar type participatory program, and she's got a lot more there. I'm not going to go into everything, but I also want to give a little promo for our product that we're going to be pre-selling June 1st, knock on wood, together in collaboration with Mike Robinson, a bath soak bath product, botanical cannabinoid, amazing stuff. So I've sampled it, and let me tell you, I just about levitated out of my bath last night. And the pain in my legs from running was diminished significantly, so I can't speak highly enough about this. You want to stay tuned for more on that. Priming the pump here, but you definitely want to try it. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and play a little music and say, take it away, Sherri. So Sherri, thank you so much for being on. You are the founder and CEO of the GreenNurse Group, medical director of Irie Bliss Wellness, and the host of GreenNurse Radio Go, GreenNurse on the Go Radio. I don't know why I get that.
That's all right. GreenNurse on the go, on the go.
And we are at the beach.
Oh my God. So you figured this is like the perfect place for us to be.
Yep.
The water is soothing, you know, we're out of our elements. We're someplace else having a nice conversation, connecting, communicating, and hopefully to bring hope and joy to people.
Yes, much needed. Yeah, so I asked you to come on and talk about, I think, cannabis and mental health.
So I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm going to be a little bit transparent today. I think it'll be really helpful to talk from my own personal perspective in working with cannabinoid therapeutics and mental health in regards to my own mental health.
That's great.
Yeah, I think it'll just make sense. So before I got sick in 2012, I had a history of migraines and ADHD. So the attention deficit disorder. So both of those were managed very well with medications, you know, working full time as a nurse in the big teaching hospitals in Boston, 3 kids. My life, I was highly functioning. It didn't impact my life. When I took a hit from eating a bacteria while I was working and ended up in the intensive care unit, you know, with a megacolon, you know, an infectious disease, Yeah, it was really bad. So I got sick in 2012, took a hit to my gut. I went from high functioning to not functioning at all.
Really?
Yes. So in a matter of like 2 days, home thinking I have the flu, one point I get up and I can't even walk. I'm in so much pain.
Really? Wow.
Mm-hmm. So ended up in the, emergency room, intensive care. I had this condition called Pseudo Membranous C-Diff colitis. Y'all out there know what C-Diff is? It is a stinky, horrible, horrible disease that I would not wish on my worst enemy. And how I got it, the majority how most patients get this is from antibiotics, or they can get it in the hospital. It's an acquired infection. Well, I was healthy and wasn't on any antibiotics. I was only being treated for migraines and ADHD. So I had a completely healthy gut, working 50 plus hours, single mother of 3 with, 3 kids. One of my children has a disability. We've talked about him before.
Right. And I want to know how you managed all that too, but keep going.
It was very difficult. It was, so high functioning to not functioning. So you're going from here to here, completely down to the bottom of the barrel.
Which is like our worst fear as driving, trying to keep up with what is expected of us in society, moms. Yeah, that's a lot.
So, I was on the other side of the bed, like in a really big, bad way. All of a sudden I'm the patient. And having to advocate for myself. So not only, was it the physical issues that I had, but I also had to deal with the system, the system that I worked in,
right. Okay.
How is that going to affect my mental health, and how are they going to take care of me? And it was really, really, the trauma that I experienced from this illness is so overwhelming. High functioning to not functioning, home bedbound, in the hospital, couldn't take care of my kids, could barely eat. Have issues. I'm just going to say it like it is. Explosive diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, pooping your pants in public. Okay? Oh
my God.
So you can see how, and literally I can talk about anything. Like literally I would run around the block naked to talk about poop and stuff that comes out your bum. Sorry. I was so mortified, horrified that I had this gastrointestinal illness that was debilitating.
Complete loss of control.
Like in all ways.
Yeah.
So, like literally. It was horrible. And then the issues with eating and being able to take in food. So that spiraled into, mental health issues, developing the anxiety and the depression. And over time, I wasn't getting better. Agoraphobia, afraid to leave my house.
Okay. So you were at home. You had to stop working?
Yeah. So I went from the hospital. I was in the hospital for a few weeks and then came home, and I was on mega doses of antibiotics, oral antibiotics. I was on IV antibiotics in the hospital. I couldn't go home until I could take oral, and multiple pharmaceuticals. And that's when I started my polypharmacy journey. So it was basically started off with a gastrointestinal illness, the C. diff colitis, on IV vancomycin, oral vancomycin, flagyl, steroids, you name it.
Wow. So
narcotics, anxiolytics, antidepressants.
Okay. Wow.
So it went from that. Then from there, the mental health. So I've always, I've had ADHD, and I've always been interested in mental health, anxiety. I've had a history of anxiety, and it was related to the ADHD. So I've been connected to a psychiatrist and a behavioral therapist for a long time. Mental health is really, really important to me. So I've already was hooked up with them,
right?
Which was good, which
That's
is very
good.
helpful. But then, there's the medication adjustments and, getting the appointments and being sick and not being able to leave the house, and how can you get to the appointments? So there's the whole powerlessness of wanting to get better and take care of yourself and having nothing work. So it went from the gastrointestinal to the mental health issues to the severe stress, panic disorder. I'm not going to lie, like horrible panic attacks.
I hear you. I've had them, and I thought I would never be a person that would have that happen to me.
Me neither. It was completely
I used to think it was like, no.
People make it up. That's what I was thinking.
Exactly.
Making it up.
It's all in your head. Yeah.
So the mental health piece of it. And then the next piece of it is they discovered that I had a lump on my breast. Okay. So this was something that I wasn't expecting. It was, and we went to go have the lumpectomy to figure out what it was. Well, it was too close to my chest cavity wall. So they basically said to me with that lump that I would need to have open chest surgery to remove the lump to see what it was.
Oh my gosh.
Did I want to do that? Did I not want to do that? And basically that took a lot of, thinking to do. And I decided to wait, and why am I going to cut myself open? And it ended up going away, which was great. But still, you automatically, it's one medical condition after another. That's like traumatic because you feel like there's something wrong with you. Like, what am I not doing? Like, why isn't anything working for me? And so then from there, I developed another chronic autoimmune condition, which I'd never heard of, polymyalgia rheumatica. Crazy autoimmune condition, which is a chronic myofascial pain syndrome that actually affects, I call it the turtleneck of glue and glass.
Oh my goodness.
From all through neck, shoulders, upper chest, and back, would feel like I had, or with a football player, the whole, like the shoulder girdle thing of pain. It felt like I had glue and glass under my skin. Every time I took a deep breath, it was like sticky. It felt like it was dragging across. I mean, it was a nightmare. It was horrible, horrible, horrible. I became severely debilitated. I wasn't able to take care of my kids. My ex-husband and my boyfriend at the time were there to take care of my kids. I became bedridden.
Wow, Sherri. Wow.
And I'm going to tell you too, and this is the part of trauma that I'm really trying to help patients with now, but when I'm working with them, because I've been there. I've been there. I call it medical trauma. And I also call it
absolutely
pharmaceutical trauma.
Yeah. Pharma injury.
So, and it's a real thing. And I've had a lot of traumatic experiences in my life growing up. I've had some issues with trauma. In college, I had some issues with trauma. I've actually, been a nurse for a very long time, working in intensive care units in these big hospitals. So what I've seen, I've experienced trauma taking care of patients that were trauma patients, and just the stuff that I've seen and done, I was able to handle that. But when it flipped back around to myself and I became chronically disabled, that's when I started circling the drain of despair.
Drain of despair. That's a place a lot of people live.
I know.
I've been there. Yeah, I can relate in different ways, but yeah.
Yep. And it was cannabinoid therapeutics that came into my life that really made the significant, impactful change that allowed everything that wasn't working to start working again, and was actually allowed me to start processing information from a different place, because I was pulled out of the story of the sickness, the story or the trajectory of sickness and illness. It was the cannabinoids that actually opened the door that allowed everything that wasn't working to start working again.
That's really beautiful in a lot of ways. Yeah. And I don't think that it seems like, unless you've had that kind of an experience, it's hard to describe to someone, the difference of like how a plant or cannabis can be that powerful. And I hesitate to say that, it saved my life, or it's a tool. It's a tool. Opens the doorway, like you said.
Yeah, it was, I was utilizing all of the other tools that existed, the traditional system, the holistic system, the functional integrative system, the acupuncture, chiropractor, essential oils, homeopathy, you name it. And none of it worked. Why? Because my endocannabinoid system was completely 100% deficient. I was not making enough of my own internal endogenous cannabinoids to keep my system regulated, including my brain. So as we know, we've had this discussion before, is cannabinoids are adaptogens, right? It works on our mind, our body, and our spirit all at the same time. When I teach about my little umbrella, the endocannabinoid system is at the tippy top of the umbrella. And it blankets on top of our umbrella, and all the spokes on the umbrella are different organ systems. The fabric of the umbrella are the neurotransmitter signaling systems, and the endocannabinoid system is the system on top that regulates everything. So if we're not making enough of our own internal endogenous cannabinoids, then we get a dysregulated system, and it affects all of our systems in our body, not just one.
It like something's off balance, and I think that's one thing with traditional medicine versus a more holistic approach that I find frustrating, is that if you're treating one organ or you're seeing one specialist and getting, treatment for that, to me, it's going to affect the rest of your system, and there's going to need to be balances and counterbalances. So
yes. And when I educate medical health professionals, on the endocannabinoid system, the biggest takeaway that I hope that they get when they hear me speak is that every single thing that you tell your patient to do or not do affects that system.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. One question that jumps to mind is when you were going through this, how was it with the doctors and how were you getting through that? And what kind of led you to cannabis?
Oh, this is a good story. So, I had my primary care doctor, my gastrointestinal doctor, my psychiatrist, my cognitive behavioral therapist. I had an infectious disease doctor.
Your
right?
team.
So I had a team, right? And none of them communicated with one another.
Right. That's another point, and that's with dealing with, yeah.
And the part that's interesting too is hindsight and looking back is, all these different things and these crazy pains and, I was worked up. I mean, I saw a neurologist, I saw a rheumatologist, just trying to figure out what it was. Essentially, looking back, I already know what it was. I had a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. Yeah. The hit that my body took when I ate that bacteria started the cascading. And if you think about all the things that either support or don't support the endocannabinoid system, I wasn't getting good nutrition because I couldn't eat, right? I wasn't managing stress because I was in fight or flight the entire time. I wasn't getting the amount of micronutrients that we talked about. I was taking so many pharmaceuticals, and a lot of pharmaceuticals have drug nutrient depletion. So my body was being depleted of further nutrients, which continues to cause an endocannabinoid deficiency. I wasn't getting restorative sleep. So here I am, my adrenal glands are continuing to secrete cortisol, which is keeping me in that fight or flight response.
So it started with one thing, and that you could see how that can start early on with someone and just.
Yeah. So I truly feel that if my doctors knew about the endocannabinoid system, they would have been able to look at my past medical history of migraines and ADHD, and a light bulb would have gone off in their head that it said, wow, she may have a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency based on research and substantiation of these different conditions based on what we see, because they have said that migraines in particular, people that have migraines, they have an overexpression of CB1 receptors in their brain that are actually looking for the cannabinoids.
They're give it to me.
So I truly feel that if my doctors knew about this, they could have directed me more appropriately to endocannabinoid system modulation, to upregulate it to different activities. And one of the best ways to do that is using cannabis. There's other tools too, but when you're sick, suffering, and dying, and you can't work out and you can't take supplements and you can't eat right and you're not sleeping and you're in panic mode 24/7, cannabinoids was what plugged in and started to work. So what brought me to cannabinoids? I've always understood cannabis to be recreational.
Okay.
I did it in college. I did a little bit in high school. I did it after college. It wasn't like something regular. I was like, I liked it, but it wasn't the end all be all. It was whatever, And so what it took was, it was one of my nursing colleagues who had just retired. She was one of my patients because I do energy healing work. I do Reiki and reconnective healing. So she was one of my clients from energy healing. And she had been trying to get in touch with me, and she had just turned 70 and I kept blowing her off. So she came to my house with a big fat joint. And she walked into my bedroom and I looked at her and I go, are you kidding me? I mean, is this a joke? Seriously? You're bringing me weed? I'm like, how is this going to help me?
Like, aren't you? Yeah. Like, it's like a luxury problem. Take it.
So it was very, very interesting. You know what she said to me? She looked at me and she goes, Sherri, get with the program. I go, what? She goes, get with the program. She says, cannabis has been medically legal in Massachusetts since 2012. And this was at the end of 2014, beginning of 2015. So at the end of 2014, she came to my house. She came with a joint. We talked about it. She told me to get with the program. She said, you have nothing to lose. And she was right. And so I smoked. I was blown away. Immediately, the pain started to melt away. I felt like my head was cracked open and consciousness poured in, and I was pulled out of the story and trajectory of sickness, illness, victimhood. And I started to process information immediately from a different place because I was taken down like a lot of notches, and I wasn't impaired. So I was like, this is so weird. I feel really good, but I'm not high. And then I was like, give me that. I want to, right? And then I was like, I have to figure this out. I got upset. I got mad. Like, why didn't anyone tell me about this?
Yep.
I probably wouldn't have been suicidal. and that's where I was, like circling the drain of despair, literally every day, waking up, wishing that I didn't wake up. It was another day on the insanity merry-go-round of the same thing happening over and over. My days were horrible, just trying to get food in, just trying to get through the day, and that spoon theory where you have 9 spoons.
Yeah.
I only had like 3 spoons.
Yeah. If that, yeah.
So basically, this plant, literally, I'm not going to lie, it saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to figure it out. I delved into the science. I delved into the plant. I got my medical card. I was plagued with stigma, totally plagued.
Really? Yeah.
Sunglasses, the hood. I went to a different town. I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't want my colleagues to know. I didn't want my family to know. I didn't want anyone to know that I was doing this because I was ashamed. And the shame was around this. How could I be a nurse for this many years and understand holistic, integrative, functional health and traditional medicine and still be as sick? How come I couldn't figure this out? And that was the shame. It's like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. I mean, it makes total sense.
So I know. So I thought that there was something wrong with me. And of course there was. I had an endocannabinoid deficiency. So how did I really develop the GreenNurse Group platform, the community? Yeah. I didn't learn it. I didn't learn it in a book. I didn't learn it at a dispensary. I didn't learn it in a webinar. I didn't take any classes right away. I delved into the plant, into the science, started experimenting, buying a ton of stuff to play with it, to cook with it, to experiment with it. I was reading online. And then I was like, and I'm not going to lie, I needed a lot of THC to manage my pain.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do people do this and not be impaired?
Right. I remember. Yep.
I'm like, I got to figure this out. And then the next piece of it was is how can I interact in the world without feeling weird about doing cannabis all the time? So I joined, and this is to the cannabis community. I love you all. If it wasn't for you all, I wouldn't be here. I joined every single recreational Facebook group. And I said, I'm going to learn from the people that do this every single day. And when I joined these groups, I joined the groups with the premise that they're not going to give a shit about me because they're all going to be too high. That's what I thought. My perception of cannabis user is, let me just tell you, it was completely different. I go to these community sessions and started meeting people, and they embraced me. They taught me everything that I know about how to roll, how to dab, the rigs, everything, cook, decarboxylate, the different cannabinoids, like literally my hands-on learning happened in the community.
That's awesome.
And so then from there, I joined the American Cannabis Nurses Association, the Cannabis Nurses Network, and really started to take classes and try to match everything that I was learning in the community with the science. And the GreenNurse Group was birthed upon the discovery that I had a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. And when I figured out how to make it work for me below the threshold of feeling high all the time, that's when I knew I had something. If I could help someone else get comfortable, it took me 2 years.
2 years. And I'm not surprised.
2 years to figure out how to make cannabis work for me below the threshold of being impaired, and also to come off of my pharmaceuticals. So my whole goal was this: if I can help a patient get comfortable in less time than it took me, then I've done a good thing as a nurse.
So you had to be one of the few cannabis nurses, because I didn't even know there was such a thing until like late 2019 when I met Mike. Yeah, I had no clue.
Oh, that there were cannabis nurses?
No, I didn't know anything about it. My partner has been a longtime cannabis user. So I always had this, because he's really smart, pretty, he's had success, career success or whatever, but, he didn't seem to meet the stereotypes of these stoners and whatnot. And so I felt like I had this anchor, when I pulled away personally with stigma in family and other situations, the recovery community where I was, that was not okay back in 2014, 15. So.
Oh, you mean the recovery community?
Yes. Yeah. I struggled with that because that's where I had I'd left my life basically with my ex-husband and my kids for a little while and let go and went to recovery. And then I was finding that I couldn't stay in that and hold on to these truths that I was learning, like you're saying, it opened something up, and I knew that there was no going back. So
no going back.
No going back. And that's not easy. And there's like you said, the learning curve between when you started and you smoked that first joint to where, you weren't impaired. You learned a regimen that worked for you. And it's such an individual, personalized thing that I think a lot of people don't understand from the outside. I'll hear, I tried a few gummies, or I did this, and
it's cannabinoid requirements are different from person to person. They can change over time. No two people are the same. When we're working with patients, we're not just looking at their medical diagnoses, we're looking at their symptoms, and we're looking at their lifestyle.
Okay.
Because my intake paperwork is obnoxious. I'm not going to lie. I actually explain it to patients. I'm like, well, I just want to let you know that, we're the GreenNurse Group. We're registered nurses. We're all medical cannabis patients. We all believe in this plant. We believe this plant should be deschedulized. We believe that everyone should have access to this plant. However, we are still nurses and we need to protect our licenses. So I kind of, Sherri, what the heck, that 4-page intake was so long. And I said, well, I'll tell you the reason why I like that 4-page intake, because I can make better suggestions and recommendations, because cannabinoids and health and wellness activities pair really well together.
Yes, they do.
Really well. And when I look at someone's sheet, intake form, and I see that they're not drinking enough water, water's huge. Or if they're drinking a lot of alcohol, it's never to alcohol shame anyone, but it's just to help them realize that alcohol is toxic to all 11 organ systems. The minute it hits your body wants to get rid of it. It depletes your body of B vitamins. So it's just really looking at these different things that people are doing. Pharmaceuticals. I'm not anti-pharma. Trust me, I was on a ton of them. Right now, I choose to manage my pharmaceutical needs with cannabinoids and other plants and other wellness tools. However, would I use a pharmaceutical if I needed to? Yes. However, pharmaceuticals, looking at that piece of it, a lot of patients don't realize that pharmaceuticals have a drug nutrient depletion. So if you don't know the nutrients that are being depleted in your body from the pharmaceuticals that you're taking, what happens? You're further down.
You get worse.
The endocannabinoid system.
And then there's, you're opening a window for all kinds of other sickness, disease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was that nurse. I want to thank her very much. She's actually came on my show. She came on one of our shows last year, and to tell her story. She's been using cannabis for 53 years. That's a 70-year-old woman. And what she said to me after she told me to get with the program, this is so funny. Sherri, get with the program. I go, what program? And so she told me, and she goes, Sherri, listen, I've been using cannabis every day since I was 17. That's 53 years of just doing a little bit, a couple times a day. Mm-hmm. I've never been hospitalized, she told me. And she goes, I've never been on any ongoing medications. So she's had to go on medications for specific things, but nothing continuous. So that to me was something that I really needed to look at.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you walk the line, destigmatizing and integrating into mainstream, not only recovery, but just in general? I find that hard. I mean, to this day.
I think I honestly see this being integrated into mainstream medicine, but it's going to happen in the community first. So in other words, as healthcare professionals, a lot of cannabis nurses, including myself, the traditional healthcare system has failed us in multiple ways in one. Not only were surgeries denied, medications were denied. I had to fight for that, for surgical procedures. Mental health system completely broken. Bottom line is that a lot of systems that us medical professionals, especially cannabis nurses, have come from, we've come from broken systems. And so we want to make it better. And how do we make it better? We start in our communities by educating. And then there's going to be a critical mass. Eventually, what's going to happen is, and I've already seen it now, I'm getting phone calls, pediatrician. Hey, what's the green nurse? A neurologist. Hey,
really?
Yes, we've been certifying doctors, nurses, pediatricians. They're starting to understand. They're starting to show an interest in it.
That's a big step.
That's a big step. So what we see as nurses is that we're developing these educational communities like, the Green Nurse Group.
Mm-hmm.
There's other green nurses across the country that are starting to have their own little individualized consulting businesses that really to get into the community, because we've found that, once you can reach the community and patients start to go to their doctors and say, I'm using CBD, I'm trying this, I'm trying that. I tell doctors, you have a moral, ethical obligation to understand this plant.
Absolutely.
And I tell them, you will be your patient's hero.
Yeah. How did they respond, just out of curiosity?
So I'll tell you, my doctors, my psychiatrist is all for it. He's seen a huge difference. My cognitive behavioral therapist is all for it. My gastroenterologist is really funny. He goes, oh, Sherri, you're just stoned all the time. I was like, okay, here it is.
Is that how you want to see it?
This is how I look at, this is what I say. Your perception of me is not my reality. So it's like, it's all good. Yeah. I'm not going to argue. My primary health care doctor says, oh, be careful, be really careful.
Same.
There's not enough studies out. And I'm like, well, to be quite honest, we're behind in the studies in the United States, but other countries are very well advanced. And trust me, there's plenty of studies.
Yeah.
Even my dentist is all for it. So my dentist was like thinking, this is hilarious. My dentist, I was talking to him about it, and he says, wouldn't it be cool if patients, instead of laughing gas, we could put a cannabis mask on?
Oh my gosh. Seriously though, yeah.
So, the discussion is being had, which is wonderful. We're starting to decrease stigma. We just want to, educate and show people that this is another opportunity to bring health and wellness tools into people's lives that don't know about it. They should know about it. It should be something that is just put on the table,
Yes.
Even if the medical professional doesn't understand it, refer to people that do understand it and that want to explain it to your patients.
So can a doctor refer to the Green Nurse Group? Or
Absolutely.
Okay, that's good to know. Because
doctors, nurses, healthcare providers, yes, absolutely. Anyone can refer to us.
So if a patient comes in and is using cannabis and they don't really understand that well, but they could say, well, hey, you could go over and check out these guys.
Yes. So here's an example. I got a call from a hospice who this patient was sent home on hospice. They gave her about a month to live, and she had already gotten her medical card, had all of her goods, and she didn't know how to use it. So I went to her house and did a home visit and literally just showed her how to use what she had, and her quality of life improved. And I didn't think that she was going to live for the full month. Well, I get a call 4 months later.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
She's still alive. And she says to me, Sherri, you're never going to believe it. She goes, the tumor's gone. I go, what? The tumor's gone? So this woman, she was 70 years old, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, unresectable, failed chemo, failed radiation, sent home on hospice to die. 3 years later, she's alive. Last year, she went to Italy.
Oh my goodness. I get chills. Yeah.
So she became off of hospice, her, no evidence of disease, became off of her pharmaceuticals, the anti-anxiety, antidepressant, and the opioids. She's still on other pharmaceuticals, but she's living her best life. And she was able to travel, and she's not dying anymore.
That's great.
Yeah. So
wow.
And that's one example. And the thing too is when I'm working with patients and we're talking cannabinoid therapeutics, health and healing isn't necessarily the absence of illness or disease. It's just
good point.
Okay. I have a medical list, like literally a mile long. Like when I got my medical card, the doctor said to me, wow, you're awfully young to be on this many medications and have this many problems. I was like, you're right. This sucks. So, but then it made me realize that, okay, this plant has helped me to come off of my pharmaceuticals. I'm engaging in life again, but I still have those diagnoses, but I'm not letting those diagnoses impact how I live my life.
They're not defining you in any way.
No.
Yeah.
And that is what we call post-traumatic growth.
Post-traumatic. That's, good to know. Yeah.
Post-traumatic growth is when a patient or a person goes through a traumatic situation, a trauma of whatever it might be, whether it be, a veteran, combat veteran, family, death, dying, sickness, illness, witnessing, first responder, whatever the trauma is, that causes the post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic growth is when people take that situation that has devastated them and have worked through it and processed it and have come out on the other side with a positive change in their life. So honestly, I can honestly say that the silver lining in me getting sick is now that I'm a cannabis nurse and I'm able to help people reach new levels of wellness using plant medicine and other tools.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel my heart goes out to, these rare disease communities, particularly the one that my kids have the diagnosis,
TSC.
just because I see posts daily, multiple pharma, and my kids are still on pharma, and it weighs heavily because I think that they will do better when I can slowly start to do this. But as you know, it's a process. I can't just rip them off their meds. I think just being able to sit with a lot of cognitive dissonance and not judge and not, even making suggestions, but just kind of sharing your story and sharing what's worked for you or personally what's worked for me, because very similar. And just like being at the bottom and feeling as if I've tried every possible route and then finding cannabis. So, and wanting to teach people and wanting to proselytize or evangelize, but just it not being cool.
Yeah. So, well, that was too part of my issue was the stigma surrounding it. So I'll tell you.
Yeah.
This is a really funny story. Yeah. So my mother found out I was using cannabis. And let me tell you, she was not happy. So strict Irish Catholic literally wrote me letters. I put them in the freezer. I go, Mom, I'm not putting you on the back burner. I'm freezing you.
Did you really?
I took the letters. I didn't read them because she
I get it.
She blocked me on Facebook. And I knew she told me she was going to write me out of her will. So I was like, okay, this is okay. This is my journey. This isn't her journey. I'm not going to change your mind, and nor am I going to try to. I am feeling better and my life is starting to get better. I need to keep in this trajectory. Mm-hmm. What ended up happening was I was still, though, with her embarrassment, which is okay. No judgment on her.
Right.
I had to look at the stigma that I was plagued with, and I needed to make a decision. Am I all in or am I all out? Mm-hmm. There's no going back. I've gone down this rabbit hole. So in order for me to overcome my stigma, that's what made me develop the podcast Green Nurse on the Go radio show.
Makes sense.
I'm out of the cannabis closet to share my story and to start sharing other people's story of healing. And one of the patients, and I just recorded a show with her just this week. She's a nun.
Oh, I saw that.
That was just a 5-minute clip. You should see the whole show.
I want to. Absolutely.
So Sister Suzanne Carroll, she's an amazing woman. She's a woman that got her medical cannabis card 3 years ago. Huh. However, never did anything with it because she didn't understand how to do it.
Right.
Her nephew put her in touch with us and we started working with her. And literally she has this disease called CRIPS. So it's complex regional pain syndrome, or RSD. It's a chronic myofascial pain syndrome. It rotates different parts of the body. She was on over 200 micrograms of fentanyl and morphine. And she had an internal neurotransmitter stimulating, a pump that was put in that failed. So she basically, so the quality of her life was literally close to none. When I worked with her, she was in bed 20 hours a day, only up for 4 hours from 8 until 12. And she was on multiple pharmaceuticals, multiple medications, and nothing worked. And then cannabis came in and we started to introduce different cannabinoids and playing with it and educating her. And literally, as of January 1st, she's 100% opioid free.
Oh my gosh, that's powerful. Yeah, we didn't dip into that too much, the impact that cannabis can have on the opioid crisis and whatnot. But that's, wow.
So Sister Suzanne, so this was a great one. This is how my mother, it overcome the stigma for her. So when Sister Suzanne started on cannabis 3 years ago, she came on our show probably about 8 months into it. And she shared just a clip about how it was improving the quality of her life and that she couldn't believe how well it was managing her symptoms. And so at the end of that clip, I had asked her, I said, Suzanne, my mother, I make fun of it all the time. I don't care. I said, my mom blocked me on Facebook and she's sending me hate mail. I said, I need to know, what would Jesus say about all this cannabis? And so Sister Suzanne goes, Sherri, Jesus would say, what the frig did it take you so long to use this God-given plant that I created for you? I was like, amen. I took that clip and I sent it to my mother.
Wow.
4 weeks later, my mother called me up and she said, Sherri, what's the gateway?
Really?
And so we started her on topicals. Then we started her on CBD isolate. Then we did broad spectrum. Then we did full spectrum. And now my mother takes whole plant medicine every single day.
Oh.
And her show is probably one of my favorite shows because I asked her, I said, Mom, will you come out of the cannabis closet?
Oh, you had her on?
I had her on.
Oh, I got to see that.
It wasn't this past Thanksgiving, but the Thanksgiving before. I'll send you the link to it. It
Please.
was really, really a powerful interview. And the part that I really loved, what she said, was this. She said, Cher, I can't believe how cannabis has worked for me and I'm not high. I said, oh, stop. You're not high. How does cannabis work for you and you're not high? What does it mean for cannabis to work for you and not be high? And so I needed the language. I needed her to say it because it's going to impact so many other people. She said that cannabis is helping me to sleep better. I'm less anxious. The pain has become background noise. I'm not so depressed about my medical problems. And I said, and you're not high? She goes, no, I'm not high. I feel good.
Bingo.
All right.
Yep.
So it was that. So just the language surrounding how we educate on cannabis, that high word.
That's the trigger for my mom.
God, let's call it feeling good.
Elevated or medicated properly.
Medicated properly, elevated, well-being, sense of calm, sense of peace. That's the part that's interesting too, is the cannabinoids actually helped my mother's cognitive function as well. So, it was able to allow her to process information from multiple different perspectives, increase the neuroplasticity of her brain, where different areas of her brain are starting to communicate better with one another where they hadn't before.
Wow. Yeah. I look back at people, family members that have died and whatnot, and I think, oh man, I wish that they could have come to learn, but we're here now and moving forward. So yeah. Thank you, Sherri. Take care.
All right. Bye, beauty.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to The Source Cannabinoids. And thank you so much, Sherri Tutkus, for this fabulous podcast. For more information on anything that you heard on the podcast, www.tsctalks.com. Like I said, we are going to be pre-selling our product in collaboration with Mike Robinson very soon. Keep tuning in for information on that. You can email Mike at 50kreasons@gmail.com or the podcast at pjlacey6@gmail.com. Thanks so much. Have a great one and stay lifted.